chance to say hi to Brad from Sydney, and this looms as a massive day of racing. How excited are you?
Yeah, it's one of those days that gets you up and about. Definitely a good morning to you, Aidan. There's plenty to get through there. As you touched on, there's 3 Group 1s on the card. Plenty of interest in the Premier Stakes as well, because we've got 6 of the Everest contenders going around. So it'll give us a really clear picture as to who is the horse to beat come the Epsom in a couple of weeks' time.
Yeah, let's first of all have a look at the Epsom handicap, and this is the 7th on the card. It's a race that has drawn all the stars. D'Argento's come up out favourite at 440 and 185, ahead of Unforgotten at 450 and Pirata at $5 and $2. How are you assessing the Epsom here, Brad?
Yeah, it's a pretty cramped market, and I think the punters and the bookmakers have got it pretty right in terms of assessing those at the top of the market. I have a slight lean towards Unforgotten at the current odds. I think it should be favourite over D'Argento. Just thinking it's got a little bit of a sharper turn of foot. So be interesting to see what they do from the barriers, because as you can see, they're all drawn inside there. Of those hard in the market, Pirata is the one that I'm really worried about, because he's drawn 4, and he's the one with the most tactical speed of that trio, and he can really use that gate just parked behind what looks a really frantic tempo and get the run of the race. And we saw how massive he was there last start. It was a good break between runs. He come off a little setback there, was posted wide the trip in the Bill Ritchie. But Unforgotten is the one I'm with. Really impressive there in the Chelmsford Stakes. She was held up. But once she got clear, a really instant turn of acceleration and put her rivals away. She's a really exciting mare. She's down on 52.5, so fits in really well under this handicap conditions, and I think she's the horse to beat Karen McAvoy in the saddle. And as we know, Chris Waller is just so hard to beat in these big Randwick feature miles.
Exactly, and of course we do have that really compressed sort of handicap, and it's ruling out some of the more heavier weight jockeys. So to have bookings such as a Kieran McAvoy or a James McDonald on a lightweight horse, how important is that in the scheme of this Epsom, Brad?
100% it is. I often see in these big races that the ride itself wins the race, because at this top level there's not that much between these horses. They're all very, very talented animals. So you're 100% right. As you get lower in the weights, to have the bonus of one of the world's best jocks still being able to sit on, it's a massive point bonus.
Yeah, it sure is. Let's move you on to the Metropolitan, and over 2,400 metres. Be interesting just to see what sort of guide this is into other Spring Cups races. 8th of the program sees Brimham Rocks here as a 480, 195 favourite again for Kieran McAvoy, with the lightweight Miss Admiration at 750 and 260. Up the top we're getting horses like Wall of Fire at $10, Highbridge further down at 8 and 280. What are your thoughts on the Metrop here, Brad?
Yeah, you did touch on Brimham Rocks, and it's certainly got a bit of timing about it there. I think it's a deserved favourite. We'll just touch on its profile a little bit. So, of course, it ran second out of Willius out of the Kingston Town, and to me that looks the premium kind of form reference to this race this year. Although it's very easy to be romanced by looking at the weight scale. I think it's easy for punters to fall into the trap and thinking, those down in the weight are so well advantaged. But looking back at the recent history in this race, the Metrop, 4 of the past 5 winners have actually carried 54 kilos or more. So if you like something at the top, certainly don't let the weight scale put you off. And I do like one at the top. I think he's been underrated a little bit by the market, and that's Big Duke. He's running the Kingston Town. He went right back to last, charged home. He was one of the only 3 horses in the race to break 34 seconds for his last 600 metres. I think he's cherry ripe now, 2,400 metres. And you look back through the history of this horse's form, and in Sydney he just grows a leg. He's had 6 starts here, 3 wins and a couple of placings, and the only time he's missed was that eye-catching 5th there, which I touched on in the Kingston Town. So there's a real nice sense of timing about him. He ran second in the Metrop last year, so we know he's got the quality. He actually ran 4th in the Melbourne Cup, so yeah. I don't know how many horses in this particular field would be running 4th in a Melbourne Cup. So I think he's about double figures at the moment, and if you want to play something each way, I think he's the way to go. But I do have a lot of respect for Brendan Rocks there with the 50 kilos, and again, with Karen McAvoy on board, who has a really strong book of rides.
Yeah, exactly. I think he's only 5.5 from rekindling in that cup last year. Patrick Aaron and the Lord Mayor, the former Kiwis, how are you rating them in this field, Brett?
Patrick Aaron is going along really nicely. He's a run behind a couple of these. He's only going to be 3rd up, but listening to Chris Waller during the week, he said it's a very clean, winded horse. It doesn't take a lot of work, so perhaps we don't rule him out on that. He's in the field with 51 kilos. He's drawing a lovely gate. I do have him there as an outside hope. The Lord Mayor comes into it. Obviously, there's no form like winning form, and what I like about this horse, although he might just lack a little bit of the class here at the end of the race, he's a winner. We've seen him win by narrow margins these last 2, and what I've liked is when the race is there to be won and lost, he just stuck his neck out there at the finish, and he certainly profiles like a horse that's going to excel out to extra trip, extra 400 metres. So, again, I think he's a horse that might struggle to win the race, but if you're playing wider multiples, I'd certainly throw him in the mix.
Okay, yeah, the first of the Group 1s is the Flight Stakes for the 3-year-old fillies, race 6, and Miss Fabulous was terrific in winning the T-Rose Stakes, and she's a worthy favourite here at a short price of 205, ahead of Pretty in Pink at 6 and Fiesta at 650. How do they beat her on that T-Rose run, Brad?
Yeah, good question. I was hoping you could answer that for me. I think she's a deserved favourite. She was a dominant winner there in the T-Rose, as you touched on. That last 200 metres was just so impressive. You can't see the mile pulling her up at all. Her last 200 metres in that T-Rose Stakes was just outside what Winks produced on the same day for her last 200 metres split, which was the fastest of the entire day. So it just goes to show the acceleration she had there at the finish of her race. It's hard to see any of these turning the tables from that particular race, and 7 of the past 10 favourites have won this race, and although it can be a little bit deceptive sometimes, those historical stats, I think it's relevant in a race like this, because when you've got a Princess Series, we get a good look at all of these and how they line up against one another. There's very rarely something that comes outside of that form line. So she's certainly the horse to beat. And I know Chris Lees is really confident. And again, it's that man, Karen McEvoy, on board. Couldn't he have an enormous day? Yeah. If there is one, you want to play it a little bit of each way odds. I think it's a horse with plenty of upside, and that's Made for Heaven. We saw her out the back there in the T-Rose. She was a gap between runs because she had a little setback and missed the Furious Stakes, but really charged through the line. She's the profile of a horse that will relish the mile, and I'd certainly be throwing her into your trifectas because I think she can run a big race, and she's a filly with plenty of upside with James McDonald in the saddle.
Before we let you go, Brad, I want to have a quick look at the Premier Stakes, and then we'll grab your best bets. But just have a look at the market of the Premier, and he will see if we can get this up. There we go, 280 about Red Zell, Trapeze Artist at 350. You're getting 750 for Santa Ana Lane in her time. Shoals at 11's an Invincible Star at 8. How'd you rate this the sprinters in this one?
Really good race. You just got to assess which horses are going to still have a little bit left in the tank, and which of those are kind of your natural fit horses and are going to be up and running one start before what is their grand final in the Everest. And Red Zell is the one that does tick that box. He did miss a run with a minor setback there in the shorts, but he's a horse that does race well fresh, and you just got to back the Snowdens to get him right. The one that I'm really interested in here is Trapeze Artist. We saw him really dominant in the TJ Smith Stakes last preparation, beating Red Zell, and quite comfortably there. He is one of the current favourites for the Everest, and I think this is the race where he really asserts himself as being the horse to the beat. Maybe he is half a run short, because Gerald Ryan's going to have him cherry ripe on that big day come October 13. But I liked what he did there in the Fair Marks. He had 61 kilos, heavy track, and just peaked that last bit. It's going to be a very different ball game here back on top of the ground. Nice dry track for him, and I think he just tucks in behind the speed, and we'll get last crack at them. The other runner I'm really interested in is Santa Ana Lane. He's a horse that slipped under the radar a little bit. He's run at Caulfield there first up. It was an absolute cracker humming to the line, and there's quite confidence about this horse, how well he's going. So keep an eye on him. But for me, if I had to throw out a tip in this race, it'd be the 2 Trapeze Artists.
Okay, and what about the ones you're going to guide our Kiwi punters into today? What are you liking there in Sydney today, Brad?
For best bets, I've gone with race 4, number 10, Egg Tart. I wasn't overly thrilled when I saw Classic Uniform scratch from the race with a vet certificate. That does bring a little bit of speed out of the race. But I think she is clearly in a race where she can win third up 2,000 metres. She's been flying this preparation, and this is the race for her. Again, Karen McEvoy, sounds like a broken record here. And then we'll go across to the last, where I'm particularly keen on a Godolphin horse, Coruscate. He's always promised a little bit. As a 2-year-old, he was up and about, but then he just lost his way a little bit. The penny certainly dropped now, though. I think he's going to be really firm in the market, so you might see him about $5 at the moment. I imagine he starts favourite, so if you do like him, I'd certainly jump on board quickly, because that win at Canterbury was outstanding, rounded up his rivals from last. So he's drawn wide, but I think by the time this last race at Randwick, they might be coming down the middle. That's what we often see there at Randwick. So certainly don't look at the barrier and let that turn you off. That's race 9, number 10, Coruscate.
Brad Gray joining us from Sydney. Thanks for your time, Brad.